My name is Palmer McKay. I'm interviewing Vietnam veteran Richard Cunningham, who served in the Air Force and was in Vietnam from 1967 to 1968. Mr. Cunningham, this interview will have 4 sections: your life before service, basic training, your time in Vietnam, and your life after service. Let's get started with your background.
Okay.
Where did you grow up, and what was your area known for?
Grew up in Augusta, Georgia, known for the Masters, #1, and that's about it until I got into the Air Force. Amarillo, Texas, and places like that.
Can you tell me about your family growing up?
Yes, I have an identical twin brother. I had 2 sisters, both older than me and my brother, and mother and father. And,
would you describe your dad's job as blue collar or white collar or something else?
He went to Georgia Tech for a while, but he was blue collar, I guess you call him, an electrician.
Do you have any memories of your father or other men around you telling war stories from World War II?
No. Well, yes, I do. My dad was a flight instructor. Just right as the war started, because they were taking all pilots. What are you doing? Sorry.
That's okay.
Anyway, he was a flight instructor, and in Shreveport, Louisiana, and Boykin, South Carolina.
Where was he based?
Sir?
Where was he based? You said Boykin, South Carolina, is that right?
It wasn't. I can't remember the name of it. It's right where Boykin, South Carolina is, but there, and Shreveport, Louisiana.
Did you have a favorite World War II movie growing up?
No, not that I can think of. I liked them all. Except, some of them were fakey, but anything with Audie Murphy in it, I didn't like.
Can you give us some examples of ones that you did like?
What?
Can you give us some examples of ones that you did like?
Mostly John Wayne stuff. Can't remember the names of them, though. I watched one the other night. Can't tell you what it was either.
A lot of Vietnam veteran memoirs mention John Wayne as an influence on their expectations of war, so it's interesting you brought it up. Do you remember John Wayne that way?
No, I remember him and the movie he made that was, I thought it was the sorriest movie ever made, and I can't remember the name of it too, but yeah, it was so staged and silly and secret agent stuff. Marines didn't do that, but yeah.
Now, I'd like to move on to the start of your service and basic training.
Mm-hmm.
Historians of the Vietnam War note that in addition to volunteering, being commissioned, and being drafted, there were also draft-motivated volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe yourself?
I was more than less a draft volunteer for the Air Force, but I wanted to get in something. I didn't want to be a grunt and things like that.
Is that the main reason you volunteered? You didn't want to be a grunt?
I wanted to go too, and had nothing holding me in Augusta, so went ahead and volunteered. And
what year did you enter the service?
January 28, 1965.
Between then and when you deployed, did you expect to go to Vietnam?
No, it wasn't too hot then. We weren't thinking of it. We just, went through basic training in tech school, and still were hearing about it, but that was about it. And it didn't get real hot till 66, 67.
Did you expect to be drafted?
Yeah. I wasn't 1A out of school. I figured they'd get me pretty quick.
What, if anything, did you know about the country of Vietnam before you enlisted?
Very little. Siam, wasn't it called Siam before it was Vietnam? Or was that Thailand? I can't remember. I'm getting old.
What did you know about the Vietnam War?
I just know that the reason we got into it was the Gulf of Tonkin incident, and we were already there. Da Nang was the first place the Marines landed when passed the Gulf of Tonkin resolution.
Do you remember anything specific about the last days before your service or the trip to base?
Just didn't know what to expect when I had joined, and I, like I said, I'd never been away from home, old homeboy, never been anywhere. And Amarillo, Texas is where I had to go. San Antonio. Yeah.
So just to clarify, you did basic at San Antonio, Texas?
Yeah. And then tech school at Amarillo.
How would you describe your boot camp experience?
Lonely. Never been away from home before. And I had some good friends, though. And they helped me make it through, and I helped them make it through. And I stayed in touch for a long time, but they've since passed away. And so.
To talk about that a little bit more, how difficult was the experience of boot camp for you?
It was kind of a joke. What Air Force did was we had to run an obstacle course one time, no time limit, and it's the same one that the Boy Scouts ran. And also I qualified with an M1 carbine, 60 shots. That's the only firearms training I had. And so it was kind of funny.
Did anyone around you struggle with boot camp?
Yeah, I had people said they had to go home. I gotta go, and take off. Of course, they'd catch them, but they took them out of the service.
And were you based somewhere else in the States or elsewhere before you went to Vietnam?
Yeah, I was at Moody Air Force Base. That was my first assignment, and that was in Valdosta, Georgia. It was Air Training Command. They worked from 8 to 5, 5 days a week. And then I went to Georgia Air Force Base in Victorville, California. And then I went to Vietnam.
And did you expect to go to Vietnam by 1967?
I had volunteered to go, and I just felt like I had to. My wife didn't like that very well, but she didn't find out for about 4 years after that. But yeah, that's something I had to do.
And did the Air Force kind of come around and ask people who wanted to go?
No, it wasn't voluntary. I mean, you could volunteer, but they would take you. That's the reason I went from Valdosta to California, because they were getting a squadron ready. That's what I was told. And,
I'd like to move on to your time in Vietnam.
yeah.
What month did you arrive in 1967?
September 67.
Could you describe your first 24 to 48 hours in country?
Yeah, it was highly unusual. When I landed, there were troops lining the revetments with their cameras. You couldn't photograph that things, but didn't bother them. And it was just so loose, and except for the Marines, they treated them like you know what. But we were, we got off the plane, we went wherever we wanted to. And we were treated very well, and ate very good.
What did you expect when you arrived, based on TV or stories you had heard?
I had no preconceived notions. I knew I was in the Air Force, and we didn't do much. I mean, aircraft mechanics, yeah, and loading and all that stuff. But yeah.
Would you describe yourself as being in combat, in the rear, or something else?
Mostly in combat. We had 22 rocket attacks while I was there. I went through the Tet Offensive, and got hit a few times there too. And yeah.
You mentioned you were an airplane mechanic. What kind of work did you do?
Everything major that the flight line didn't handle. Just mostly change flaps, change windshields, and stuff like that.
Did you learn any Vietnamese words or phrases during your tours?
Dee Mao. Go away quickly, I think that's it. But no, all the mama sons and the ones that cleaned our barracks up and all that stuff, they all spoke English. And the only thing, they want to know whatever you had, they want to know how much it cost in MPC, military pay certificates or whatever. That's the only thing we were allowed to have. We couldn't have greenbacks. But
how would you describe the people you served with in terms of economic background, race, or religion?
It ran the gamut. It's every background, every walk of life, and I enjoyed them. I had some really good friends there, and
Can you give us some examples?
Well, my best friend was an engine mechanic, and he was in my barracks with me, and a couple of engine mechanics, couple of what do they call them? Avionics and environmental, egress, all kind of stuff like that.
Did you serve with any black servicemen, any other people of color?
Oh yeah, like I said, we just ran the gambit.
And you mentioned mama sans.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember any other women on base, either Vietnamese or American?
Just the nurses. We had a hospital right next to my barracks, and I rarely ever got to see them. And when planes land, civilian, you'd see the stewardesses, but that's about it.
How did living in Vietnam and meeting Vietnamese people affect you?
We were restricted to the base. We couldn't leave the base. And what little I knew of the Vietnamese, I liked them. I had no resentment. But they were our barbers and stuff like that. In fact, after Tet, they didn't come back. So they were Viet Cong. They were killed.
So did you have specifically Vietnamese barber shops on base, or were they just employees?
They were ours. They just worked in them. Most of the time in the BX or something like that.
And did you work with any ARVN?
No, they were there though. We had the VNAF, the Vietnamese Air Force there, and they had parts of it, mostly helicopters and observer aircraft. But I saw one die. He got shot down coming in, and he crashed, killed him.
Did he crash outside of base or inside of base?
Right on a runway.
Wow. What do you remember about Vietnamese children?
Never saw any. Like I said, we were restricted to base. Couldn't leave unless we were on a bus. And they'd take us over the Navy side or China Beach.
But you never stopped anywhere in between. You just went from one base to the other.
Yeah. They blew that bus up one time.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I wasn't in it. I was supposed to be, but I wasn't. And one guy, he talked so loud after that, he was deafened. When the bomb went off, he lost his hearing, and we called him Rasputin because his name was Ivanov. Ivanov, he was Russian, and I called him Rasputin because he was kind of crazy.
So just to clarify, you never went into any Vietnamese cities, never Saigon, nothing like that?
No, just passing through to go to China Beach or the Navy PX.
Do you remember any distinct animals during your time in Vietnam?
I had a dog. Name was Peaches. I think the Vietnamese ate him after I left. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, sweet little dog. I have movies of him, but I don't have those. My daughter has all that.
In other words, the Air Force didn't let you bring him back. Why didn't you bring him back?
I didn't even try. I knew it was going to be ridiculous. What the paperwork you'd have to have.
Do you ever remember any rats being a part of life on base?
No, we didn't have them. I mean, I know they were part of that country, especially their toilets, go out over a ramp. That's all it was. But ours, they were Quonset huts in between, I think, every other barracks. And you could drink our water, though, potable water, and the showers and all. It was nice.
And just to kind of circle back to Peaches, where did you get Peaches?
Well, she showed up. She was just a puppy then. I don't know who brought her or what. We were filling sandbags, and she was playing in the dirt and having a good time. So I kept her.
And when you left, did you just leave her, or did you give her to somebody?
Yeah, I think she disappeared way before I left. Don't know what happened, but.
Did you experience any culture shock in Vietnam?
Beautiful country, except for where Agent Orange got with defoliation and the smell. Diesel fuel. The whole country smelled like diesel fuel. And they had banjo ditches, I don't remember what they call it. I think it was banjo ditches, where they dumped all the waste and stuff like that.
Did you get sick at all during your time in country?
No. I had a typhoon come through that we had to tie sheets up. We just screen wire and louvers, the barracks, and I was on the second floor. And wind was going, and the rain was going straight through it, out the other side. And so we'd take sheets and put them up, try to block as much of it as we could.
What was the most interesting food you ate in Vietnam?
I didn't eat any of theirs. They fed us pretty good. Like I said, it was Air Force, and every time the Marines, we were an R&R center for them, and they shot one of our cooks one time because he wouldn't feed them at a certain time. It was late at night when it showed up. At least that's what I heard, and but. I had a Marine that would, every time he came in, he slept on the floor and next to our bunks. And he was a good guy, artillery. But he got wounded and they sent him home.
So, sorry, just to circle back, you said there was an American serviceman who shot a cook because he wouldn't feed him?
Yeah, it was a Marine. That's what I heard. They said that now. But...
Wow. Fascinating. Was it a Vietnamese cook or was it a
No,
American
it was
cook?
all Air Force.
Gotcha. And once again, just kind of go back to food a little bit. Can you give us an idea of the kind of food that you ate? You said you ate well.
I always had breakfast twice. It was called midnight chow because I worked at night, and I got breakfast then. And then when I got off, I ate breakfast again, and about the only thing you could tolerate. And if we had a rocket attack, you didn't get fresh eggs. You got powdered eggs. Now, I never have figured that one out, but worked. But yeah, that was, I don't know, all in all, it was not a bad experience. I mean, I enjoyed it some. And my first attack, rocket attack, we had bunkers on where the hangar I worked in, and I almost smoked a cigarette, but I didn't. Everybody else was.
So you ate generally breakfast food when you ate.
Yeah.
What were your hours like?
12 hours a day, 8 days a week. Well, 8 days, 1 day off. 8 days, 1 day off. And it was 12 hours a day.
When would you start and when would you end?
Usually it was 6 to 6 or 12 to 12, depending on what shift, they had you on. But yeah, 12 to 12 is what I ended up with. And I wouldn't go back to the barracks. I'd go to a little bunker out at Transit Alert. And that's Follow Me truck. That's who that is. Yeah.
Do you remember alcohol being a part of life in Vietnam?
Good Lord, yes. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about it? Just a lot of alcohol?
Well, it was rationed. I think I told you this before. It's 6 cases of beer and 6 40-ounce fifths or whatever a month. And the beer was $2.40 a case. And so we took advantage of that. We really did. I came back an alcoholic. I really did. And most everybody I know did too, because they encouraged it. Not encouraged it, but they made it easy. My NCOIC, when I got into maintenance control, he'd buy a pallet of them and put them in the back room, and we just fill out a little piece of paper, IOU, and take one. We all had refrigerators that we had to buy.
Did you buy the refrigerators from the PX?
Yeah.
Did you ever see Vietnamese civilians collecting or using American trash?
No, that would have probably been off base wherever they dumped it. And they didn't, they wanted, the Mamasans, they wanted anything you threw away, they wanted it. And, but I'd give it to them,
Can you give us an idea of like the kind of things that you would throw away and then give to?
Alarm clock. They took that, and that's about it. They're just in radio, and cause I didn't want to take it with me.
Did you personally encounter the Viet Cong?
No. Like I said, one time they gave us our M16s and all the ammunition we could carry and put us out on the perimeter. But I think the Army guys in front of us were more nervous than we were because a bunch of idiots with loaded guns. And I never did find out why they did that.
Did you encounter Vietnamese POWs?
No.
Do you remember seeing Agent Orange being sprayed?
They didn't spray it there, but they loaded it, and the planes would come back all shot up and leaking and stuff like that. And they, Da Nang was a spray box, and that's what the records showed. We were sprayed, many times, and I got my share of it.
Yeah, you mentioned last time we talked about the fact that you had a barracks next to Agent Orange planes.
Yeah, Ranch Hand. That was their TDY name, was Ranch Hand. There were 4 C-123s.
And would these planes just park next to your barracks?
Right across the little street they had, and they were, I don't know what a revetment is.
Can you give us a description?
They're steel about that wide, like a fence on both sides full of dirt. And they only went out. They didn't come in this way. And about the time I left, they had concrete roofs on them and everything else. We lost so many planes from rocket attacks that they did that.
Were you concerned at the time about Agent Orange?
No, there wasn't much hoopla about it at the time. I knew it was dioxin, and a guy that with me, in my barracks with me, had come from Cameron Bay, and that's what he did. He mixed the stuff and herbicides, that's what they called it. But yeah, I bet he didn't survive very long, but I never knew. His name was Frank Kane. Never forget his name.
And did you ever receive any direction that Agent Orange was safe?
No. They denied it was that toxic until they finally had to admit it.
What were some of the ways you coped with the war?
Getting drunk. That's about it. Like I said, we got hit quite often, and bullets coming through the roof and stuff like that. But it was an adventure to me. It really was. I maybe not at the time, but as I look back on it, in retrospect, I had a good time, really. If I could have done, I told my wife, if I could have done that 8 to 5, I'd be doing it now.
And in the context of all these rocket attacks and other attacks that you were facing, did you expect to survive the war?
Sometimes I didn't, when we'd be in a bunker or something like that. But yeah, I know that on July the 15th, 19, the year before, about 2 months before I got there, this was in July 15th, they like to blown Da Nang off the map. They destroyed just about all the planes. They had to move them all up to the north end, and they eventually moved back down to the south end.
And how did people around you cope with the war?
Whenever we got where we would ignore the siren, they would, but I went, get out of my bunk and stepped on somebody trying to go under my bunk, and just sheer terror. But they were, like I said, we didn't even get out of the bed or stop drinking. We just went on about our business. But we knew when they were getting close. But yeah.
Do you remember humor or slang or jokes being part of life in Vietnam?
Well, we had the books. Those was it Sex to Sexy? I don't know if you ever saw those.
Can you give us an idea of what that is?
Very good cartoonists did it, and the captions were very funny and all that. But I had them all, but some of them were that big, and they went away when I moved just recently, 10 years ago.
And did you have to buy these, or were they that you had to buy them?
Yeah, you had a subscription.
Did you buy them from the PX?
No, you had to do it by mail.
And was this from the States, or was this from?
Yeah. Can't think of anything else. We had radio. No, I had television, excuse me. We got reruns of Gunsmoke and stuff like that. But yeah, AFVN, I think that's what it was. It was entertaining sometimes. We all had TVs also, and radios and stereos and reel-to-reels, and because they were so cheap over there.
Mm-hmm. Were there any popular jokes among the servicemen? Potentially even about the brass?
It was ITFP. Yeah, I hate this fucking place. We got to get out of here. There was a song by the Animal. And yeah, that's about it that I can say. But
And what did you watch on TV? You said a lot of reruns of Gunsmoke.
yeah, Gunsmoke. I Love Lucy, all kind of stuff like that. Just all vintage stuff. Yeah, wasn't color; it was black and white. And but that was about it on that.
Any showings of Smothers Brothers or Laugh-In?
That was after I came home, and I liked the Smothers Brothers. It was like the show.
Were you aware of active duty military personnel who opposed the war?
No. Oh, we all complained, but that was just a given. You're gonna complain, but no.
Since you were in country in 1968, I have to ask, how did you experience the Tet Offensive?
Well, they closed the base to all but combat essential aircraft for 4 days, 5 days. We didn't get any mail because it couldn't come in because that wasn't combat essential. And we got hit, I think, 1 or 2 times with the rockets, but they were stretched out so thin, the Viet Cong and the NVA, that they got slaughtered is what happened, except for Way, battle at Way, in Way.
And how big was the base at Da Nang at that time?
It was huge. How many people did we have? I don't know. Well, the Army, the Navy, and the Marines were there. The Navy and the Marines were over on the other side. Army was passing through most of the time, and then we were on the other side. And yeah.
What was the most memorable friendship you had during your time in Vietnam?
That crazy friend of mine, he could play the guitar and he'd sing, and we'd do all that stuff. We actually went to the officers club one time. We had 2 lieutenants that were good friends, and they were non-rated. They weren't pilots, but pilots are good guys. They didn't give you any of that salute me now and all that crap. No, because we were aircraft mechanics, and they knew, their life was in our hands.
And your crazy friend, where was he from?
California.
And was this the Russian?
No, that was Rasputin. No, I heard from him. It's been probably 12 years ago. He called me, wired out of his gourd. He had joined the Navy. When he got out of the Air Force, he joined the Navy. And he had all kind of delusions. He was telling me how we kind of saved the base and all that kind of stuff. I don't remember that. And but he had gone by that time. He's insane, I believe.
What was his name?
Chris Carter. I named my son after him. I mean, I thought that much of him until later on when I heard from him that I knew he'd gone crackers.
What was the most beautiful thing you saw in Vietnam?
Well, the mountains around us, Monkey Mountain, 327th Hill, 327, all that. It was beautiful. Plus the South China Sea. We were pretty close to the South China Sea, and we could go to China Beach, and it was nice. No women, but nice.
What was the worst thing you saw in Vietnam?
Pilots dying. Our pilots, other pilots. So an F-105 came in from Air Asia, which is supposed to have done everything for that plane. And his chute had, I guess, got wet and froze. And so when he went to kick his chute out, it didn't open. So he dropped his tail hook. It snatched out of the back of the plane, and he just went off the end of the runway and broke his neck, and it flipped over and killed him. And I had pictures of that aircraft too. And one of ours, 731 damage is battle damage, and they said they had extensive 731 damage. It was coming in, and it landed between the runways in the dirt. But anyway, got to looking at it and had wood all in the intakes and in the landing gear. And they said he was dropping 250-pound landmines or something, and a MiG got on his butt. So he just went into the trees to get away. But he did get away. And before I got there, a B-52 crashed. And only one survived that, and that was the tail gunner. And then when I left, an EC-121 electronic countermeasures aircraft veered over and crashed into the PX on where the barbers were, right over there. And but I didn't get to see that. I just read, when I was on Facebook, I did the 366 Tech Fighter Wing, and I did not realize how many had been killed. And I mean, not even pilots. They would rocket attacks, I guess.
Who did you write to or receive letters from when you were in Vietnam?
My wife, every day. She's since passed, but
Sorry.
Yeah.
And you mentioned your wife a little bit earlier. How did your wife cope with you being in Vietnam?
She just, are you talking about the one that died? My wife passed. Typically, she just wrote the letters and how much she missed me, stuff like that. We were newlyweds, and yeah, that's about it. And I wrote her and how much I wrote every day, and she wrote every day. And
thank you for sharing that. Were there any other ways you communicated with friends and family back in the U.S.?
No, people made tape recordings. I couldn't say a word. I had a tape recorder, God let me use tape recorder. I was going to leave my wife. I couldn't say one word. Just, I don't know why I was so darn shy, but I couldn't say it.
Do you remember any USO shows or recreation on base?
The USO was right next to my barracks, and they had all kinds of bands and hobby shop. Man, you could buy them big old wooden models, that you had, for pennies on the dollar. I had a P-40. I never finished putting it together, but and a lot of stuff like that. They cooked. I ate more French bread and Vienna sausage sandwiches because they fixed them right there for you. And they had groups, bands that would come. It's good.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about those USO shows?
Yeah, like I said, they had rock bands come in, and I can't think of stupid magic shows. Nobody wants to watch that. And Bob Hope came there, and I didn't. It's so crowded. Everybody there went, and so I didn't go to it. And but yes, that's about the only memories I have of the USO shows. But it was a night. I enjoyed going over there because you could do anything. They had all kind of little separate areas. In fact, they had a book that you signed and you put where you were from. And I found a good friend of mine, Gary Ford. He was over on the other side of the barracks, though. Camp Da Nang, and I asked him, well, what do you do? He said, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you. He was in some kind of security, but...
And were there any sports or any other kind of recreation like that on base?
No, we had an outdoor theater. It was over there in the Tent City is what I told, well, Tent City. And but they were pretty current movies. Plus we had a theater down in the main part of the base. But you could go there. That's where I saw that John Wayne movie. Turned me against him. But
and can you give us an idea of what this Tent City is?
Yeah, Tent City. We had barracks. We had rows, 2 rows of barracks like this, and then the the Officers Club, Airmen's Club, NCO Club were in the middle, and Tent City was off to the side over there, and there was a French bunker there that they had done. I think that was a projection booth for the movie. But if you went and lived in the Tent City, they gave you a full-size refrigerator to use. But it wasn't none of them were air conditioned. We all had our little fans, but and it won't blow through a mosquito net. You had to have that mosquito net.
Was it mainly Air Force?
Yeah, it was all Air Force. It was just, that Camp Da Nang, it was all Air Force.
And could you choose to live there, or were you put there?
No, you could choose to live in Tent City, or you could be in Camp Da Nang, which was the same place, just they were living in those big old tents. Yeah.
What was your most expensive or frequent purchase at the PX?
Besides alcohol, I bought a 35 millimeter camera. Everybody had a 35 millimeter camera. And in fact, I ended up with 2 of them, and I came home and I gave them to my wife, a daughter. She was taking photography at Augusta State, and I think she ended up throwing them away because they were single lens reflex, totally manual cameras. And everything's digital now.
What kind of photos did you take?
Me? Just everyday stuff. And I took a lot of my wife and I and my kids when they grew up or got older. And I had a movie camera that I had over there. Bought that in California. When we went out, paid $210 for that, and that was a lot of money. But we figured you're never going back to California, because we went to Disney World, Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, down to Ensenada, Mexico, Tijuana. So we recorded all of it.
Did you buy any Vietnamese souvenirs?
No.
What was R&R like, and where did you go?
I did not go on R&R. I actually came home on emergency leave. My dad had about 3 strokes, and I figured that was R&R because I came home for 30 days. And yeah, I know I didn't board it. I'll tell you what, though, them boys, you take $100 with you, like you go to Kuala Lumpur or Hong Kong or Hawaii, or any of those places, and first thing, a bunch of girls would meet the plane, and they would take your money, and then they would show you around the whole time you were there. Wow. Beautiful women, too. Any nationality you wanted. Yeah. But I didn't do it.
Could you tell me about your flight home from Vietnam?
Yeah, like to kill me. Well, my first flight home from emergency leave was on a C-141. There was 6 of us on it, 2 forklifts, and about 12 coffins. And they kept the plane cool inside. I guess so they didn't spoil, but we had to sleep on them mats on the fold-down seat things. But, yep, that was that one. Now, the second one on being discharged coming home, everybody was smoking. Everybody liked to kill me. Ugh. And it wasn't against the rules then, you know. And once one smoker starts, they all smoke.
So, apologies to back up a little bit.
Okay.
Was meeting women or prostitutes something that people look forward to?
I would say so. Mostly they would when they got paid. The saying was "horcall," and that was Vietnamese wives of pilots. They were the VNAF, but they were prostitutes too, and never partook of them.
And that wasn't available on base.
Yeah, it was on base. The VNAF was on the base. 'Cause, you know, we weren't allowed off base, and but I just had no desire to do that. You know.
Can you tell us a little bit about what VNAF is?
Vietnamese Air Force. What do you stand for? But that's the VNAF. That's the Vietnamese Air Force. They had A-1Hs, which are prop-driven aircraft, called SPADs, and they had some F-5s, which was the T-38 fighter version of it, and a lot of forward air controller stuff.
Do you have any idea the number of prostitutes that worked on base?
No. I imagine there was a few.
Many, or is it one group?
Well, it kept everybody happy. Well, I don't even know anybody that did that with.
That's the end of my service questions.
Okay.
Is there another story we haven't talked about from your time in Vietnam you'd like to share?
About the maintenance deal, how the McNamara's whiz kids came up with these brilliant ideas that caused so much damage and kept me busy. They, what it was, they had called Lao-3 pods, L-A-U, hold 19 rockets each.
Yeah.
And they were 3 on a MUR multiple rack. And they put a little fiberglass nose cone to make them more aerodynamic. Well, when you going in to fire your rockets, you drop your flaps down. And first rocket through that pod will bust that fiberglass nose cone all to pieces and damage your flaps bad. And that's what I did mostly, was change flaps. And it was tough.
Was McNamara unpopular among the people you worked with, or did you just not like him particularly?
I just didn't like it was probably later on, flying the same routes up north and stuff like that. He was responsible for more pilot deaths than anything, because they knew exactly where you were going, and they'd have all their SAM-7s waiting for you. And the MiGs were pretty tough on them. That's another thing. The Phantoms didn't have a gun on them because McNamara and his whiz kids said, "This is the age of missiles. You don't need a gun." So what was the first thing they did? They put a gun pod under the belly of the F-4s, and that we were known as the gunfighters, the 366 TAC fighter wing gunfighters.
Let's talk about your post-service life.
Right?
What relationship in your life was most changed by your service?
I guess it would have been my wife. And, well, we just matured. I turned 21 in Vietnam, but Yeah, I probably changed too. Got my tour.
In what ways do you think you changed?
Just knowing what life was. We had children, you know, had two children, and that sort of stuff, you know.
In what way was your relationship with your wife changed because of Vietnam?
Well, I loved her more because I had missed her, you know, and she missed me, and you know, she worked at the bank.
Did you know any anti-war veterans?
Just on TV. Later on, I became anti-war because I knew the futility of it. It was just ridiculous because those people were in their homes. You know, you're not going to would you expect to run them off. You know, trying to dominate them. You're not stopping the spread of communism by any means, and it just wasn't fair.
And when did you become anti-war?
About a year after I came home, watching all the propaganda and all that stuff.
Fascinating. Did you ever hear about VVAW, Vietnam Veterans Against the War?
Yeah, I didn't like that. You know, I mean, you can be anti-war, but do all that other stuff. It's uncalled for. I mean, there's such thing as patriotism.
Does the name Ron Kovic ring a bell?
Mm-mm. Forrest Gump doesn't.
Who, since the war, have you talked to about Vietnam?
Just my next door neighbor. Well, he's no longer my next door neighbor. He's the one that got me. I hadn't even gone to the VA. I didn't even use the VA or anything else. And he was a combat medic in Vietnam, and he was totally disabled because he had cancer, a rare form. He's the one who told me that it's a shame you don't have cancer like I do. But they told him you die of old age for whatever bothers you. But he had some experiences that I would not have wanted to have. And
Have you been to the Wall in D.C.?
no, I haven't, and I regret it because I've got about 4 people that I went to school with there. And
Do you remember the Wall being controversial?
no, I was all for it, you know. It's a shame. I have a cousin who lives in, well, not Washington, he lives in Virginia, but he was stationed at the Pentagon the entire career he had. He was a captain in the Army, but he was in some type of intelligence. And he's offered many times to take me up there, and, you know, because he knows the whole place. And my late wife's uncle, who was about 5 years younger than she was, taught that. He was taught at a private school in Washington, and he was history, Civil War, or the War of Northern Aggression. That's what I call it. All that, but he knows everything about every battle monument.
Have you seen the Traveling Wall?
No, I haven't. Did it come? I don't even know if it came here, did it? Well, not here, Augusta or Columbia.
Yeah.
Probably Columbia, yeah.
Yeah, it's come to South Carolina a couple times. What do you think of the Wall as a monument?
It's fitting to the people who lost their lives. 54,000 was it? I think 54,000. Or 57,000. I can't remember how many it was.
Have you been back to Vietnam?
No, can't afford it. It's expensive. I would like to go back just to see Da Nang, especially the air base. They're probably living in all the revetments now.
Would you like to go back?
Mm-hmm. I'd like to see it.
This is my last question.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite book, poem, or movie about Vietnam?
The book that my wife's uncle wrote is Combat Trucker, and that was a very interesting read. No gore or all that. It was just some interesting experiences and stuff like that. He was in the 319th Transportation Company, which was the only reserve unit from Augusta that went active.
Any movies that you enjoy particularly about Vietnam?
Full Metal Jacket. I love that because Da Nang, when they show that, when they're all in the tents ribbing each other, and all of a sudden the siren thing goes off, that happened exactly like they show it. Because I mean, I could see it. It was, I don't forget what date it was, but the firing was going straight up in there, all the tracers and stuff they wanted to, and then it just levels down, and they start firing.
Mr. Cunningham, thank you for talking with us and sharing your stories.
Yes, sir.